What's going on YouTube? Listen up, young elder gang. This is Dr. Charles P. Winston at You With Another Banger. Please make sure you like, subscribe and share this video, fam. I hope this video get at least 100,000 likes. In this video, you will find history, definitions, scripture, information, and best of all, what we Americans have been deprived of from the beginning, the truth. Keep in mind, this content used in this video is intended for entertainment, educational and informational purposes only. We will give you the total truth as we best understand it today. Be sure to hit that like button, young elder gang. Hit that subscribe button if you're new to the channel. Hit that bell and don't forget to check back with us every day for new content. This is Simeon Toko, the Black Jesus and the Illuminati's failed assassination attempts. Deep in the heart of Cameroon, a land steeped in ancient mysticism and vibrant traditions, there's a story that has been passed down through generations. This is a land where the past and present intertwine, where every whisper of the wind carries the echoes of ancient prophecies and timeless tales. There is a very large body of testimony of which only a little has yet been recorded or written down from eyewitnesses. This is the story of the man who single-handedly gave defeat to the Belgian army. The truth is stranger than fiction. The unbelievable spiritual power of one man that overcame the Belgian army. Is this a real-life African avatar? It all began because Leopold II wanted his country to join the League of European Empires, but the Belgian state refused to finance its part in Western Europe's expensive scramble for Africa. So, they outsourced the task to Leopold I, who used personal diplomacy to convince the European powers to grant him control of a large portion of the Congo basin. Leopold I promised to bring civilization to the so-called Dark Continent, as if Africans in the Congo were uncivilized, christened the Congo Free State. In 1885, Leopold's playground was an astonishing 17 times the size of Belgium, comprised largely of unmapped jungle. It was initially a huge financial burden, but when worldwide demand for rubber boomed, Leopold I cashed in. Leopold I became the new rubber band man. Congo lease workers were sent out into their jungle to slash down vines and layer their bodies with rubber latex. Later, they would scrape it off their skin, often taking flesh and hair with it. Their work was labor-intensive and injurious to health. The only economical way to collect it was via the forced mobilization of Congo Lease Society. The Congo Free State evolved from a vanity possession into a slave plantation. According to history today, Leopold's hell operated by an insane logic. Villages were set quotas of rubber, and the philatelists were sent in to collect it. A process that was sped up by looting, arson and rape of local villages. If a village failed to reach its quota, hostages would be taken and shot to ensure that they didn't waste time jacking around and they were getting Leopold's rubber. Leopold's pimp hand was strong. They would take their women and daughters for collateral. They were required to produce. Leopold hired local thugs to keep his game going. They were paid pennies by Leopold for their hard work. They made their children work all day and night. Those police that couldn't reach their quotas on beating, looting and raping people were fired. Leopold wanted his fear machine to keep going. He could have no one interrupting his pimp game of his rubber. It was during this time, 33 years after the atrocities started in the Congo. Among these whispers, there was one prophecy that stood out, a prophecy whispered on the wind. It foretold the coming of a child unlike any other, who would be a beacon of light destined to illuminate the world. This child, born under a sky ablaze with stars, would carry within him the hopes and dreams of an entire people, to free them from the pimp hand of Leopold. The night of his birth was marked by celestial phenomena, with shooting stars streaking across the heavens as if the universe itself was celebrating his arrival. This child, named Simeon Toko, would bear the weight of a divine purpose, born on February 24th, 1918, in a village in North Angola, Africa. They called him the Black Jesus, a man who defied death, predicted the future, and even performed wonders. His name would be spoken with reverence and awe, and his life would be a testament to the awesome power of faith and the enduring strength of the human spirit. From the very beginning, Simeon's life was intertwined with the spiritual fabric of his community. Born in a humble village, his arrival was seen as a divine blessing, a sign that the ancient prophecies were coming to fruition. The village, nestled in the heart of Cameroon, was a place where traditions ran deep, and every child was raised with a sense of belonging and purpose. But even among his peers, Simeon stood out. His birth was heralded by unusual signs. Shamans spoke of dreams filled with celestial beings, of visions that foretold his coming. They saw a radiant dove descending from the heavens, a symbol of peace and divine favor. The air, they said, crackled with unseen energy, a palpable aura of destiny clinging to the newborn child. It was as if the very elements of nature were acknowledging his arrival, marking him as someone special, someone destined for greatness. Even as a boy, Simeon possessed an uncanny awareness, a deep connection to the spiritual realm that set him apart. He would often wander alone in the vast savannah, his gaze lost in the distance as if communing with unseen forces. These solitary walks were more than just a child's exploration. They were moments of profound reflection and spiritual communion. Simeon seemed to draw strength and wisdom from the land itself, from the vast skies and the whispering winds. His connection to the spiritual realm was evident to all who knew him. The village elders, wise in the ways of the spirit, recognized in him a spark of something extraordinary. They saw the fulfillment of ancient prophecies, the coming of a spiritual leader who would guide his people to enlightenment. The elders, with their deep understanding of the spiritual and the mystical, saw in Simeon the potential for greatness. They knew that his destiny was not just to lead his village, but to inspire and guide people far beyond the borders of his homeland. The Safon of Psalm 48:3 portentously named Sadi Banza Zulu Mongo, village of the celestial mountain. The newborn emerged from his mother's womb into a very hostile environment. For almost 50 years, from 1872 to 1921, this region suffered natural disasters. There were long droughts between short lulls. Northern Angola and the southern regions of the French and Belgian Congos were devastated. The resultant famines killed thousands. So too there were thousands of deaths brought by smallpox, typhoid, sleeping sickness, malaria, and other diseases. These different plagues represent the fulfillment of a biblical prediction. None but a few people, inspired by the words of the Lord, recognized this, and the dragon stood before which was ready to be delivered, for to devour her child as soon as it was born. Revelation 12:4. The baby Simeon Toko was born mere inches from sickness and famine and plague and death, and many leagues from safety. There was not much reason for a baby to want to live, and much against it. The infant Toko caught smallpox. He was so badly affected by it that villagers thought the hand of the Almighty Father alone saved his life. He was left with the unpleasant marring of smallpox scars on his face. Compare this prophecy. As many were astonished at thee. His visage was so marred more than any man, and his form more than the sons of men. Isaiah 52:14. They pointed to the sky, to the stars that had heralded his birth, and spoke of a future where Simeon's influence would reach across continents. They saw in him a beacon of hope, a symbol of resilience and faith. His destiny, however, would not be confined to the borders of his homeland. The prophecy, whispered from generation to generation, spoke of a global impact, a message of hope and salvation that would resonate far beyond the borders of Cameroon. Simeon Toko, the child of prophecy, was destined to walk a path illuminated by miracles and shadowed by danger. He would become a beacon of hope, a symbol of resilience against the forces of darkness. As he grew, Simeon's journey would take him to places far and wide, where he would touch the lives of countless individuals. His teachings and his presence would inspire many, bringing light to the darkest corners of the world. He would stand as a symbol of resilience, a testament to the power of faith and the enduring strength of the human spirit. Against the forces of darkness, he would shine brightly, guiding others with his unwavering light. And so the story of Simeon Toko, the child of destiny, would forever change the spiritual landscape of the world. His life, marked by miracles and challenges, would leave an indelible mark on the hearts and minds of all who heard his tale. Years passed, filled with a quiet intensity as Simeon grew into manhood. His journey was not just one of physical growth, but also of spiritual and emotional development. Each day, he found himself more attuned to the whispers of the universe, the subtle signs that guided his path. He spent his days in deep contemplation, seeking solace and guidance in the heart of nature. The forest became his sanctuary, a place where he could connect with the divine energies that flowed through every living thing. The gentle rustling of leaves, the soft murmur of the river, all spoke to him in a language only he could understand. He would disappear for days, venturing deep into the untamed wilderness, his only companions the whispering wind and the watchful eyes of ancient trees. These solitary journeys were not just physical explorations, but spiritual quests, each step taking him closer to a deeper understanding of his purpose. It was during one such solitary retreat, high atop Mount Cameroon, that Simeon experienced a profound spiritual awakening. The mountain, with its majestic peaks and serene silence, became the backdrop for a moment that would change his life forever. Bathed in the golden light of dawn, he felt a surge of energy coursing through his veins, a jolt of pure divine power that left him breathless. The sunrise, with its radiant hues, seemed to paint a picture of his destiny, illuminating the path he was meant to follow. A voice, booming yet gentle, resonated within his very soul, calling him to a higher purpose. It was a voice that transcended the physical realm, echoing in the deepest recesses of his being, filling him with a sense of clarity and resolve. It spoke of a world shrouded in darkness, of suffering and despair, and of Simeon's role in bringing forth the light of truth and salvation. The voice painted vivid images in his mind, showing him the stark contrast between the darkness that plagued humanity and the light he was destined to bring. He saw visions of a world consumed by greed and corruption, where the innocent suffered at the hands of the powerful. These visions were not just abstract concepts, but vivid scenes that played out before his eyes, each one more harrowing than the last. But amidst the darkness, he also saw flickers of hope, the unwavering faith of those who yearned for something more. These flickers were like beacons in the night, guiding him towards his mission, reminding him that even in the darkest times, hope could still shine through. The voice, compassionate yet resolute, commanded him to be their shepherd, to guide them towards the light. It was a call to action, a divine mandate that left no room for doubt or hesitation. Simeon knew that his life would never be the same again. Transformed by this experience, Simeon returned to his village a changed man. His demeanor was different, his eyes reflecting a newfound purpose and determination. The villagers could sense the change even before he spoke a word. Gone was the quiet seeker, replaced by a fiery preacher with eyes that burned with conviction. His voice, once soft and contemplative, now carried the weight of divine authority, each word resonating with power and passion. He spoke with an authority that transcended his years, his words carrying the weight of divine inspiration. His sermons were not just speeches, but powerful orations that stirred the hearts and souls of all who listened. People flocked to hear him, drawn to the raw power of his message and the undeniable aura of divinity that surrounded him. His presence was magnetic, his words a balm for the weary and the lost. Simeon Toko's divine calling was clear. He was to be more than just a preacher. He was to be a beacon of hope, a symbol of divine intervention in a world desperately in need of guidance. He was to be a beacon of hope, a voice for the voiceless, a champion for the downtrodden. His mission was not just to preach, but to actively work towards the betterment of his people, to be a living example of the divine love and compassion he spoke of. He would establish the Tokoist Church, a sanctuary for those seeking solace and spiritual enlightenment. This church would not just be a place of worship, but a community, a family bound together by faith and a shared vision of a better world. And in doing so, he would unwittingly step onto a path fraught with danger, for his growing influence and message of empowerment would attract the attention of powerful forces determined to silence him. His journey would be one of trials and tribulations, each challenge a test of his faith and resolve. The Illuminati, a shadowy organization with its tendrils reaching into the highest echelons of power, saw in Simeon Toko a threat to their age-old control. They recognized the power of his message, the potential it had to awaken the masses and disrupt their carefully constructed order. A threat they were determined to eliminate. But Simeon, armed with his divine calling and unwavering faith, was prepared to face whatever challenges lay ahead. His journey was just beginning, and the world would soon witness the rise of a true spiritual leader. It was rumored that not long after Simeon was born, a British missionary, a Christian worker, had a vivid dream that a great king had been born nearby. The missionary decided that he needed to find this special child. When the Christian worker had seen baby Simeon, he knew that Simeon was the king that he had dreamt of. When Simeon grew up, he became a member of a church where he started a famous choir of hundreds of people. The missionaries in the church could see that Simeon was not an ordinary man, and they believed that he had magical powers. Some say that the missionaries were frightened of Simeon's powers, and some say they were jealous, but for whatever the reason, Simeon was banned from the church. Simeon loved Anu so much that he started his own church. Word of Simeon Toko's powerful sermons and the miracles he performed spread like wildfire. His name became synonymous with hope and divine intervention. The sick and the suffering journeyed from distant villages, drawn by hope and desperation. They came on foot, by cart, and any means available, driven by stories of miraculous healings. The lame walked, the blind saw, and the terminally ill found themselves inexplicably cured by his touch. Each miracle seemed more astonishing than the last, leaving witnesses in awe. Yaoundé, Cameroon's capital, became a crucible of faith where the impossible seemed to unfold daily. The city buzzed with stories of Toko's divine interventions, drawing even more people to witness his power. The sick, their bodies ravaged by disease, would line the streets leading to Toko's makeshift church. They waited patiently, some for hours, others for days, hoping for a chance to be touched by his healing hands. Each touch, each prayer seemed to carry a tangible energy, a surge of divine power that left onlookers awestruck. The atmosphere was electric, charged with the collective faith and hope of the masses. Stories circulated of the dead being raised, their lifeless eyes snapping open at Toko's command. These tales, though hard to believe, were recounted by numerous witnesses, adding to the mystique surrounding him. Skeptics scoffed, but the sheer volume of eyewitness accounts and the palpable transformation in those touched by Toko was impossible to ignore. Even the most hardened doubters found themselves questioning their disbelief. One particularly remarkable account involved a young boy named Essingen. His story would become one of the most talked-about miracles attributed to Toko. Struck by a mysterious illness that baffled doctors, Essingen lay on his deathbed, his tiny body ravaged by fever and pain. Medical professionals were at a loss, unable to diagnose or treat his condition. His distraught parents, having exhausted all other options, brought him to Toko as a last resort. They had heard of his miraculous healings and clung to the hope that he could save their son. The scene was one of both desperation and unwavering faith. The crowd watched intently, their hearts heavy with empathy and hope for the young boy. As Toko laid his hand upon Essingen's forehead, a hush fell over the crowd. The air was thick with anticipation, every eye fixed on the healer and the child. The air crackled with energy, and a wave of emotion swept through the onlookers. It was as if the very atmosphere was charged with the power of the divine. Moments later, colour returned to Essingen's face. The tremors ceased and his eyes fluttered open. The transformation was immediate and undeniable. The crowd erupted, their cheers a testament to the miracle they had just witnessed. Tears of joy and relief flowed freely as people embraced and celebrated the boy's recovery. Essingen, once on death's door, was completely healed. His parents wept with gratitude, and the story of his miraculous recovery spread, further cementing Toko's reputation as a man of extraordinary power and faith. Simeon Toko from Angola wasn't your average pastor porkchop. It is believed Simeon Toko was the first of the 144,000 described in the Bible. As Simeon Toko's reputation grew, his name made it back to the top of the pyramid, the Hellfire Council. They wanted to get rid of Simeon Toko. Toko was starting to get people to listen to what he had to say, and the cabal tried to kill him. Simeon Toko's life took a dramatic turn in 1949 when he boldly declared that Belgium would soon leave the Congo in 10 years. In 1949, Simeon Toko asked in his public prayer that the Holy Spirit manifest in Africa to put an end to the abuses of the colonial power. Toko became a dedicated member of the Baptist Church of Antigua. On October 1949, Simeon Toko held up both hands, spread out his fingers and told the Abus of Belgium to count them. He said, "I give 10 years to the Belgian, not one more or less to leave this country." 10 years later, to everyone's surprise, Belgium did just that. In 1960, the Belgians were obliged to leave their rich colony of Congo. This incident was confirmed in Angola, 1994, by Pastor and Andelo Kandi, who was a cook at the Conda agriculture compound where it happened on January 4, 1959. While Simeon was living in Congo, the Belgian army tried to invade the country. The Belgians had planned to kill Simeon and all of his people and keep the land for themselves. Many reported, witnesses attest, hundreds of the people of Congo said they saw Simeon close his eyes and begin to pray. He had asked for Anu to send him protection, and Anu had answered his prayer. They said that suddenly a huge army of more than 1,000 huge cherubim angels emerged out of thin air and stood behind Simeon. They had very muscular bodies and they were human-looking beings, but with supernatural powers to demonstrating. They were the Anunnaki military. They held off the Belgian colonial army. The villagers said that they saw angels fight off the soldiers with ease, an extraordinary force, for example. Some people said they seen a humanoid angel lift an extremely heavy 5-ton truck with one hand and throw it at a Belgian soldier. The Belgian soldiers opened fire on these angels, but to no effect. The colonial army was in a panic and disorder. This was on 4th of January, according to the African natives. That day, Simeon Toko had unleashed his army, which they made into a day of celebration. When the Belgian soldiers had been defeated, the angels disappeared and Simeon was left standing unscathed. This is just one story of how the mystical Simeon Toko called upon divine forces to protect his people and save his life. This event sparked rumors of Simeon Toko's special connection to a higher power. Trouble followed his growing fame. Those who felt threatened by his influence tried to silence him. In a shocking incident, a powerful machine used for planting seeds supposedly chopped up Simeon Toko. Everyone believed he was dead, but then, in an unbelievable turn of events, he reportedly came back to life. News of the miraculous resurrection spread like wildfire. However, his enemies weren't finished. Fearing his growing influence, they devised a plan to eliminate him. The Pope even sent his own guys. Another instance, the plot was to drown him at sea. In the plane with Simeon Toko sat a Catholic priest and members of Salazar's secret police, including the pilot and co-pilot. Their mission was to fly over the Atlantic Ocean, and after about an hour's distance, push Simeon Toko out of the plane into the deep sea, sending him plummeting towards the earth. But according to some accounts, something extraordinary happened. The moment the agents rose to subdue him and carry out their plan, Simeon Toko stood up and ordered the airplane to stop in mid-flight. The aircraft inexplicably stopped in mid-air. It just stood still, not advancing an inch, nor was it moving forward or backwards. Their plan to get rid of Simeon Toko changed. They were in fear. The crew was stricken by panic. The priest could hardly breathe and began desperately praying to Simeon. Then Simeon lifted his eyes and hands toward the heaven and with a powerful voice reportedly ordered the plane to resume its journey, leaving the crew in a state of shock. When Simeon Toko was sent to slavery in an agricultural field in Kaka in southern Angola, his head was offered for a price. 2 Portuguese foremen, excited by the reward, decided to take their chance. They put a plan into action to murder Simeon Toko. During a stay in Angola in 1994, we collected the testimony of Pastor Adelino Kandi, who was a cook at the Kaka agriculture compound. He saw what happened, busy with cooking. He heard a voice calling him, "Kandi, Kandi, come here." It was Simeon Toko. Once outside, surprised and curious, Toko told him to stand there and be watchful. "Once again the Son of Man will be tested," he said to him. Strange words in particular for Kandi, who was not then a Christian, and didn't understand the term of what Simeon too wanted of him. Curious, he watched one of the Portuguese foremen show up and call Simeon Toko. He said to Simeon, You see that tractor over there? There are weeds clogging the sewer. Go clean them out." Submissively, Simeon Toko crawled under the engine to fix it. When he was under the tractor, the foreman sitting in the driver's seat started it up, which automatically activated the rotating blades of the sewer. Simeon's body was instantly severed in several pieces. Terrified, Candy stood frozen to the spot, watching the foreman shift into reverse to back up and check the damage. Another foreman, who was in the service tower that day, flashed a victory sign indicating that they had succeeded. Then the unbelievable happened. Before Candy and the two Portuguese accomplices, the body of Simeon Toko recomposed itself. Simeon Toko stood up. Candy could not believe his eyes. He scared the hell out of the two Portuguese foremen. The Portuguese ran away in terror fast as they could. From that day on, Candy believed in Simeon, and his entire family converted to the Church of Simeon Toko. It was also that day that Simeon Toko made it known who he was behind that small, pockmarred face, purposefully behaving in accord with the all. That's not it. Another account of Simeon Toko being drugged and kidnapped by local assassins called the Imbangala, a warrior group in Angola. The Imbangala were known for their brutality and were sometimes called the Jaga, a generic term for mercenary soldiers. They ate enemies they killed, and their own fighters if they lacked courage. Boys had to prove their worth by killing an enemy to be accepted into the group. They held ritual human sacrifices before big battles and other major undertakings. The Imbangala were recruited by capturing young boys and were said to kill all children born in their camps. They roamed along the Atlantic coast, pillaging towns and plundering the countryside for captives to sell to Portuguese slavers. The Portuguese colony of Angola employed the Imbangala as mercenaries. Imbangala eat people, they are cannibals. A cannibal is a person who eats human flesh or organs. Cannibalism is the act of consuming another individual of the same species as food. Cannibalism is a common ecological interaction in the animal kingdom and has been recorded in more than 1,500 species. Human cannibalism is also well documented, both in ancient and in recent times. Story goes, the Portuguese hired the Imbangala tribe to kill Simeon Toko. They did as paid. They said they drugged Toko and took him to their village. They chopped him up and boiled him and made a soup. Everyone in the tribe enjoyed him. They drank his blood and they said he was tasty. They said about 3 days later, Simeon Toko was alive and well, back preaching in the town. They were in shock and confused if they really kidnapped the right guy. Some of the tribe came down sick after the consuming of his flesh and blood. Sounds like the Last Supper of Jesus story, right? In the Bible, John 6:53 says, "Very truly I tell you, unless you eat the flesh of the Son of Man and drink his blood, you have no life in you." Even the medical field couldn't contain Simon Toko in another attempt to unravel the secret of his resilience. They wanted to cut him up and figure out how he worked. The Illuminati send their best extraterrestrial doctors. They wanted to find out what is his secret, which seemed to protect the mysterious African man. They meant to perform an unauthorized autopsy on a living human being under the pretext of removing a tumor in his chest. The doctors had Simeon Toko taken to a hospital. They put him on an operating table, cut a jagged mortal wound in the left side of the center of his chest, reached into his chest cavity and pulled out his still beating heart. The heart and other arteries were severed by scalpel and his heart was removed. Simeon lay dead, his body covered with warm blood that splashed out of his heart and chest. When the media announced the death of Simeon Toko, there was real bad thunder, heavy rainstorms, and the skies turned black. It had not rained in this area for several years. Meteorologists were mystified for 3 days. The rain fell continuously. The occurrence of this event was attributed to all the rumors surrounding the death of this great prophet. Even in the face of death, Simeon Toko stirred back to life. Simeon Toko came to on the operating table. To their horror and bewilderment, his heartless corpse was moving on its own. Volition, he opened his eyes, sat up and looked at them, the chest wound by which they had casually murdered him gaping open. "Why are you persecuting me this way?" he said to them. "Give me my heart back." He demanded his heart back. In fear of what he was, the doctors put his heart back in his body and retired from the field. This is a picture of Simeon Toko, showing the big scar where he was operated on by his killers who took out his heart. According to some, he miraculously continued living. The attempts on his life didn't stop. There are tales of one time they managed to get him on a boat in the middle of the ocean, which they sunk. The next day they seen Simeon Toko walking on land. The world elites were in a desperate effort to get rid of him, but no matter what they did to him, Simeon Toko reportedly returned to life, defying death once more. They sent their best hitman, who recalled shooting him in the head and heart with special bullets. He said he was hired to kill him and paid a lot of money. He said he personally killed Simeon Toko. This man was a real professional hired killer and saw him alive again a few days later. Others stood still living at the time of this event said they saw Toko physically slaughtered and watch him bring himself back to life before their astonished eyes. He would just regenerate and the flesh would grow back, and the next day he was fine. The Illuminati were really in fear now that they sent their best hitman and the guy is still alive. The dictator Antonio Salazar's was in fear of Toko's power. He said he still can't believe it. Simeon Toko is not dead. They wanted him dead. Who is this guy? MJ-12 and the dark government wanted to dissect him. They knew Simeon was some type of supernatural being. Simeon was an extraterrestrial light being from the planet Nibiru. Simeon Toko is an Anunnaki who came down into an avatar. Simeon was set up again by the Black Hand, world bankers and their minions, who finally said, "Okay, we're going to bring you to the United Nations and let you share your message with the world. Let's get you on this flight." They bring him on this flight, and instead of bringing him to the United Nations, these devils shot him repeatedly and then actually had some kind of meat grinder device and basically like a bandsaw. The elite devils sawed up his body into a whole bunch of pieces, put him in these very radioactive shielded containers, and then had all these fighter jets dock with the plane and fly his body parts to all corners of the world, where then these containers were burned and turned into ash. They thought that maybe this would defeat him, like that his body somehow, the tissue was necessary. So if they destroyed all the tissue in all these places across the world, maybe they could defeat him. Well, he then regenerated in their offices and was fully fine, fully intact. But the sad part is that he said, "You know, you guys so badly do not want me to be here that I am now going to leave shortly. I will give you what you want. But hear me and hear me good. In the future, many others like me will be coming, and when they do, you will not be able to stop them. They are coming." The story takes a final twist. One day, Simeon Toko simply vanished. There's no record of his death, only whispers that he left with a promise. A promise that many more like him will come and they will be unstoppable.